George Galloway, and the mother of all talk shows. Welcome to the Open University of the Airwaves with George Galloway.
What's up, everyone? Mnar Adley here, filling in for my dear friend George Galloway. I am the founder and director of Mint Press News, a leading independent media outlet investigating the profiteers and architects of the forever war machine, along with looking into Israel and its national security state's influence on U.S. politics. You'll want to stick around today because we have an amazing show prepared for you. We have Scott Ritter, Greg Stoker, and Alan MacLeod joining me later on. And like many of you, right now, this nation is still reeling from the assassination of Charlie Kirk last week. Who killed Charlie? Well, that's the question on everybody's mind. And most fingers, of course, point to Israel. The internet has proven to be much smarter than the establishment would like to think. It doesn't buy the official story. Now, official narratives don't matter much right now. The Trump administration is seizing this moment to crack down on dissent, free speech, and civil liberties. It's an ominous moment in our history, and President Trump has demanded flags nationwide be flown at half-mast, and anyone not joining in the government-mandated mourning faces consequences. Hundreds of Americans have been fired already or suspended for their pronouncements after Kirk's death. 6 NFL teams are under fire right now for not holding tributes before their games. The message is clear. You will mourn who the state tells you to mourn or face punishment. In a classic divide and conquer fashion, now the pro-Israel right in Washington has already declared the culprit was far left extremism, despite the investigation into the shooter not even being complete yet. They want to crush the leftist movement. Now, Trump himself promised, my administration will find each and every one of those who contributed to his atrocity. Okay. And a right-wing website has been set up already doxing individuals online for mocking Kirk's death. Kirk's allies are pushing for a new Red Scare, invoking the days of jedgarhoover, where socialists and progressives were purged from power. They want a return to the days of Hoover, when socialists and progressives were hounded out of public life. Now, already lawmakers are pushing extreme measures, including a law that would mandate at least half of all professors at public universities be conservative. Imagine that, an ideological quota system designed to crush academic freedom while pretending it's about diversity. Meanwhile, Trump has openly threatened to suppress media outlets like ABC for so-called hate speech, trampling over the First Amendment. Politicians worldwide are denouncing the shooter, claiming there is no room for political violence. But make no mistake, this was no lone wolf. Whoever took out Charlie Kirk was a trained assassin. And yet, just days before his death, Israel assassinated a foreign head of state, Yemen's Prime Minister, Ahmed Ghalib Nasser al-Rahawi, along with most of his cabinet and 30 journalists. Israel wiped out half of Yemen's government while engaging in a genocide in Gaza. This was one of the biggest acts of political violence in a decade. And yet it barely registered in Western media. Kirk's killing has generated 100 times the coverage. That media blackout is by design. Since November 2023, Yemen has enacted a humanitarian blockade of the Red Sea, stopping Israeli and allied vessels to pressure Israel to end the genocide in Gaza. That blockade devastated Israel's economy, collapsing revenue of Eilat port by 80%, forcing Eilat port to file for bankruptcy. That's why Yemen has been targeted with assassinations and delegitimization campaigns. One ship seized, the Galaxy Leader, belonged to Israeli billionaire Abraham Ungar, a close Likud party ally. Israeli ships like these have been accused of smuggling weapons for assassinations and sabotage inside of Iran. So that motive is clear. why Israel is assassinating Yemeni leadership. So why would Kirk be targeted? Well, Turning Points USA, the organization Kirk leads, wasn't just another conservative nonprofit. It was one of Israel's most powerful assets in America. It shaped millions of young conservatives into loyal Christian Zionists. Without it, Israel's U.S. lifeline would completely collapse. Now, according to the Grayzone, pro-Israel billionaires tried to buy off Turning Points with a $150 million infusion. But Kirk pushed back. His support for Israel began to waver over this summer, echoing the shift we've been seeing across the entire MAGA base. We learned from Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson that Charlie was undergoing a spiritual awakening. He began to question Israel's policies, calling Netanyahu a bully and warning of ethnic cleansing in Gaza. He said he feared for his life. He invited guests critical of Israel onto his show and even warned Trump not to bomb Iran on Israel's behalf. At Turning Points USA's 2025 Student Action Summit, just a couple of months ago, Kirk gave the stage to speakers who openly discussed Jeffrey Epstein's ties to Israel and Israel's role in the Gaza genocide. Kirk crossed a red line. This backlash that he faced was immediate. In July, the American Jewish Committee blasted Kirk, saying he needed to go for questioning Israel. The AJC isn't just another lobby group. It's one of the oldest and most powerful with deep influence over U.S. foreign policy. AIPAC might as well could just move over. Now, weeks before his death, Kirk attended a closed-door meeting in New York with billionaire billackman, who reportedly hammered him for criticizing Israel. Kirk confided afterward that he felt watched, even blackmailed. He told his friends, "I have less ability to criticize the Israeli government than actual Israelis do." And that's really, really weird, he said. That paranoia weighed heavily in the weeks before his assassination. Not long after he was killed, Ben Shapiro of the Daily Wire and sex toy seller Rabbi Shmuley stepped in to carry Kirk's microphone, ensuring Israel remained the top priority. And Shapiro, despite all the cuts at the Daily Wire, quickly raised $1 million for Turning Points USA. A little too convenient, don't you think? Now, Kirk's story underscores just how deeply Israel's backers shape America's politics and society. Now let's get back to billackman again. He led a secretive campaign of wealthy pro-Israel benefactors to crush anti-genocide protests on U.S. campuses in 2023 and 2024. They threatened to pull funding from Harvard and Columbia unless administrators cracked down. And police did exactly that. Students were beaten, and Mahmoud Khalil, a leader of Columbia, was even detained by ICE for months. And at the center of the Columbia scandal, well, that's Dean Karen Yarhi Milo, a former Israeli intelligence analyst who once worked at Israel's UN commission. Now, this kind of penetration into American institutions is widespread. And perhaps the most explosive story we've reported at Mint Press and have uncovered is the vast network of Unit 8200 operatives, Israel's elite cyber spying force who have quietly infiltrated the very companies controlling what billions of people see and hear online. Our investigations uncovered hundreds of former Israeli spies now working in top jobs at Google, Facebook, Microsoft, and TikTok. These aren't just any veterans. They are specialists in surveillance, disinformation, and psychological operations. Take Gabriel Goidel. He once ran training at Unit 8200 where his job was to identify patterns of hostile activists. Today, he is head of strategy and operations at Google. And it's not just Google. At Microsoft, we identified at least 166 Unit 8200 veterans in top roles. And TikTok, supposedly the great enemy of the Zionist right, well, they quietly hired a former Unit 8200 cyber commander in December of 2023, right as Israel was slaughtering civilians in Gaza. These aren't coincidences. This is systemic infiltration. Unit 8200 is notorious. It built the AI-driven kill list Israel used to auto-target civilians in Gaza. It orchestrated the Lebanese pager attack that injured thousands in 2024 on this very day last year. And it created the Pegasus spyware that regimes worldwide used to hunt journalists and dissidents, even playing a role in the gruesome murder of Jamal Khashoggi. And we've identified them all at Mint Press News. And yet these very operatives now all sit inside big tech companies, at American universities, and in our newsrooms, deciding what content to censor, what protests to silence, and what narratives to amplify. This is explosive because it means Israel's most powerful cyber war unit is now effectively managing the information diet of the world. When we ask why criticism of Israel is so aggressively silenced online, the fingerprints of Unit 8200 are all over it. Now, the infiltration even extends into journalism. Axios's Barak Ravid, remember that name, who won a White House press award from President Biden, is a former Unit 8200 agent himself. So how did we get here? Where governments across the West ban protests, punish dissidents, and trample civil liberties, all to defend Israel's genocide and expansionist plans, and to empower forever wars and fuel the military-industrial complex that serves empire, while the far-right walls in the wings to inherit these new tools of repression. And Trump, perhaps to distract from his ties to the disgraced sex trafficker and Israeli asset, Jeffrey Epstein. By the way, Mint Press was among the first to report on that many years ago with our reporting with Whitney Webb. This is stoking a confrontation with Venezuela that could be as bloody and dangerous as Iraq. Yes, it's a dark time in the West, but rest assured, we, at the mother of all talk shows, will keep you informed and hold power to account. And that's why our reporting at Mint Press News is so important. And I hope you'll support us on our fundraising campaign on Indiegogo to keep our independent journalism alive. I'm Mnar Adley of Mint Press News, sitting in for my dear friend George Galloway today. Don't go anywhere.
Let's take a call from Ontario, where someone wants to fight with me. Oh dear, that sounds fearsome. Gerasimo, what have you got to say for yourself?
Hi, George. The name means the old wise one, and I'm a little bit older than you. I just want to comment on the fact that you tend to exaggerate numbers. For example, you said that 100 million indigenous people were killed in North America. Maybe you meant North America and
No,
South
I didn't.
America.
No, stop. If you're going to upbraid me, you're going to have to quote me correctly. I said from Canada to Chile. That's not North America. Go on.
The figure by David Smith from the University of Houston is that the maximum amount of people that were killed due to disease and colonial settler fascism was 65 million people, not 100 million people.
You say 65 million. I say 98 million. I have my sources. You've got yours. 65 million is one hell of a lot of people killed by colonialism in the Americas. Can we agree on that?
Oh, absolutely. It's awful. And it continues to this day with this horrible fascist psychopathic regime in Israel. This is beyond imagination. Netanyahu is a psychopath. And I'm a retired psychiatrist, and I would know what a psychopath is. And he is a psychopath. And the whole Israeli nation is sick with
Now, don't exaggerate, Gerasimo. That's the very sin you accuse me of. No, look, it was once said of me that I cannot see a sparrow without hailing it as an eagle. I cannot look at a blackbird without denouncing it as a vulture. I'll accept that I can sometimes get a bit carried away and be the opposite of economical with the actuality. That's true. But do you realize that you came on here to say that only 65 million people were killed by colonialism in the Americas amongst the indigenous, whereas I claim it's 98? Many people would think you were quibbling, Gerasimo.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. Before we introduce our next guest, I want to invite you to participate in our live poll. Is the U.S. special relationship with, fill in the blank, Britain or Israel? This poll is live on X, on Telegram, and on YouTube. I hope you'll join us. We'll be giving you guys the answer on where people voted the most at the end of the show. We do have a live caller with us. For those who want to join, they can call in, but we already have Yves in Florida. Welcome, Yves.
Hello. I wanted to say that there is a massive change in United States recently. What happened in the 20th century? In fact, in the 19th century, people realized that they needed only one bank in their country. But in the 20th century, America says that there will be one bank from the world. So just like in a country, you have the notion of legal tender, they came up with a legal tender for the world, which was American dollar. So the whole world would pay for the debt, would basically want the dollar, and there was no problem for many years. But what happened is with the sanctions, the neocon, all those problems, the dollar is not working anymore, and therefore America, to try to support the dollar, is going after stealing assets. Before, they didn't need to do that because the assets were automatically priced in dollar. Why if they want something, they print the money, they buy it. But now that this is coming to an end, they are going for the steal. And I'm going to give you an example. They want Greenland. They want Venezuela. They want Zaporozhye power plant. They want the rare earth in Ukraine. Those are assets. They want all the Middle East. They are for the steal. And my last comment is what George Galloway said that I think can be qualified. Last Sunday, he said, America and Israel is the same thing. It's just Israel is the 51st state. This is not completely accurate. No state in America can carry a genocide without any impunity. In fact, we have the example of the civil rights, for instance, where the southern states were attacked by the federal government. No, what it is, it's a donor class who controls the money, and those effectively are the same in America, in Israel, and in the West. And those people are calling the shot. That's what I wanted to say.
Thank you so much, Yves from Florida. What an excellent analysis. And right now I have to remind our viewers that, the United States does have over 100 missiles pointing right at Venezuela. And under the Trump administration, Trump is ready to take over Greenland. So your analysis is very much appreciated. Thank you so much. We are going to be taking another call. If you are wanting to join us live here, you can call in from the US. That number would be 1-844-944-3344. If you're calling in from the UK, that number is 08081965522. And we also have a worldwide number to join the George Galloway Show, 0044-203-966-2625. All right, so we are now joined by another caller, Karosh from Glasgow. Welcome, Karosh.
Hi. It's always nice to talk to you. I just wanted to mention just a few things, if you don't mind. One of the things is, like, all the people in anywhere in the world, doesn't matter where they're from, they have intelligent people, which they understand that humans are needing human beings to be living like human, not to be called animal. One of the things I wanted to mention is my Christian friends. Where is the first and second churches being built? Is it not in Middle East? Is it not in Iran, Armenia? Is it not means that you've been refused to that country and they've been nice to you? They let you build your church even? I think disrespecting any religion is not having any excuse. You can't just directly go up in the stage and disrespect everybody, burn their book and that. For one free Palestine vote, they are doing these many things. And then they're coming and swearing at everything of the other cultures. The thing is, if they complain with other cultures, all of them, you want everybody out from UK, then why they are bringing Israel flag, which is foreigner country as well? So that means they are getting paid by Israelis. I have respect for some Jewish people. They're having some intelligent people as well. And I'm not like disagreeing with all of them. I feel like in Palestine, everybody has to live. Like Jewish people, Muslim people, Christian people. It's Jesus' birth being there. It's important for Christian people as well. But I want to say to Christian people that in Islam, they respect them a lot. It's not nice to come and disrespect their everything and family culture. These people gave you so many scientists, so many culture. Where did you get algebra? You couldn't count 1 to 10. And just, sorry to bother you much, just one small thing as well I wanted to mention. That thing I lost it in my memory because I was just talking about it, different things. So just wanted to say that is all the people around the world, they understand. Like, it's not like they think everybody doesn't understand what is going on. Everybody from Christians, from Muslims, from Jewish, from atheists, from agnostic, from anything I have seen, they have respect for each other. On the road and on the street is not like what they are showing, or 1 million people came. No, it's just some teenagers, they lost their way and they're bored and that, And these people are using them to come against and say, oh no. This guy, before he come and do his speech on the stage, he was in the barber shop, in Turkish barber shop, Kurdish guy shaving him. And then he come and swear at all of them, this Robinson guy. What I'm saying is, like, they know without each other we can't do it. We have to do it together. Everybody in the world. We have to do it together. You give us some knowledge, we give you some. You give us some professors, doctors. This is life. If we can't live together in some place and say this place belongs to somebody, like this land being promised to us by God.
All right. I think we are done with that, and we really appreciate your comment and, you make a valid point of coexistence. And that's why it's so important to support the idea of a one-state solution in Palestine where all religions can live in peace. Whereas we have Western governments pushing this so-called two-state solution, which is a total mess and an acknowledgement and propping up the apartheid state as it ethnically cleanses and takes more Palestinian land under the ethno-state of the apartheid regime. So I'm going to go ahead and read out some comments that we have on YouTube. You can scan the QR code now and leave a comment on YouTube, okay? But keep it clean. We'll read it out on air on MOATS. So we have from Tim Kangaroo. He says, to paraphrase MLK, the United States is one of the greatest purveyors of political violence in the modern world. Then we have a comment from Shahan Shah. 90,000 Gazans killed, admitted today on Piers Morgan by IDF spokesman. It's about time. We have a comment from Crowhawk on YouTube. Their comment reads, Brits mourning Kirk makes me laugh. None of them even know who he was until the medium told them to mourn. That's an interesting take. Ben Johnson, who says, Canadian Parliament paid tribute to Kirk, the same one that's genocide in Gaza and applauded a Nazi. We have from Mas Pachuli. He says, it's too late. The British have been blackmailed by Israel for a long time. Thank you so much for everyone who's leaving us comments on YouTube. You can leave more. We'll read them out on air as long as they're clean comments. Okay, so we have our next guest ready. We were supposed to have, looks like Greg Stoker join us first, but he is facing some technical issues. So we're going to go right ahead and bring in our next guest, which is Alan MacLeod. He is a senior staff writer and producer at Mint Press News. Alan, now we all know that the media is comprised, bought, and biased. That's why you are watching this show. But our next guest is an investigative journalist cataloging, the silent war of on our screens on social media. Alan, welcome to the show.
Great to be with you, Mnar.
Alan is our senior staff writer at Mint Press News, and some of the things that I mentioned in my introduction about Unit 8200 and Israel's surveillance state is actually from the work of the great Alan MacLeod, who's with us right now. And this is why we call on all of the viewers at MOATS TV to support our campaign on Indiegogo to help us fund and continue our very important investigative work at Mint Press News. So I want you to inform us about the extent to which Unit 8200 agents have penetrated Silicon Valley and, its influence that we see every single day online.
Yeah, sure. So I've done a string of investigations looking into Unit 8200, Israel's most elite and most controversial spying unit. And what I found shocked me, actually. It was very simple to find hundreds of former Unit 8200 agents working across Silicon Valley companies like Facebook, TikTok, Microsoft, Amazon. Even just looking on LinkedIn, you can find at least 99 former agents of Unit 8200 working at Google, and I also found 166 working at Microsoft as well. But it's not just the quantity, it's also the sorts of people who go from this controversial spying group, which is part of the IDF Silicon Valley. Like, one example you might have commented on before already is Ray Medallion, who had a very long career in Unit 8200. She was actually an intelligence commander and became head of its cybersecurity operations team. Now, in the wake of the Israeli attack on Gaza in October 2023, Medallion moves to New York City and takes a job as Global Incident Manager at TikTok's Trust and Safety Division. So you really have to wonder what sort of global incidents TikTok is hiring this former commander of the most elite Israeli spying unit to manage for them. But TikTok is not the only one doing this. I mean, we could look at Ben Bariak, for example. Now, between 2007 and 2011, he was a cyber intelligence officer at Unit 8200, where in his own words, and I'm quoting here, he commanded strategic teams of elite officers and professionals in the field of cybersecurity. And today he's in product partnership manager for Google in London. But undoubtedly, I think perhaps the most influential person who's come out of Unit 8200 and is now working in Silicon Valley is Emmy Palmore. Now, she is one of the 20 or so people who are on Facebook's oversight board. And those are the people who ultimately decide the political direction of Facebook. They decide what is allowed, what isn't allowed, what sort of content will be promoted, and what sort of content will be suppressed. And as I said, she is a graduate of Unit 8200. She was also the general director of the Israeli Ministry of Justice. I mean, these are the sorts of people that Silicon Valley are actually hiring and bringing into their fold. And that's, of course, why we see so much suppression of pro-Palestine voices on big platforms like Instagram or Twitter or wherever you want. These voices are a threat to the establishment, and so they are ultimately suppressed. We have seen a series of campaigns from staff members at these Silicon Valley giants like Google and Facebook blowing the whistle about this and raising their objections to how closely these companies are working with the Israeli military and the Israeli government. But ultimately, their pleas fall on deaf ears, and very often these people are forced out of their businesses. Algorithms dominate our life, don't they? I mean, they ultimately decide what billions of people see every day and what they don't see. And that's why they're so important. I mean, we can see right now where Elon Musk seems to be changing the Twitter algorithm every day to suit his own political needs, that these things are not independent things that are just living in the ether. They're not neutral. They're actually written by people, and people's biases come into it, and people's political opinions come into it. And yeah, they affect everything that we see, read, and hear constantly. And so we have to really be looking at this. And if you're a more privacy-minded individual, I would also say check out some of my reporting on how Israeli companies own 3 of the 6 largest VPNs on the market right now as well. That Israeli company is, of course, set up and founded and run by Unit 8200 officers. So really, the extent to which Unit 8200 has embedded itself within internet culture in Silicon Valley is really extraordinary, and it's something anyone who cares about a free and just world should know about.
Well, to me, it sounds like this is a massive problem. It's a massive scandal, and perhaps it's a national security threat here in the United States. Can you outline more about what Unit 8200 is and its functions are within the Israeli military, and why, in your opinion, is this such a problem? Why should people care?
I guess Unit 8200 should be described as the centerpiece of Israel's high-tech surveillance and suppression industry. Unit 8200 is often called Israel's Harvard. You don't get into Unit 8200 by accident. In fact, rich families spend tens of thousands of dollars giving their teenage kids STEM lessons in science and technology, engineering, and mathematics in order to improve their grades so they will be selected for this very elite unit within the Israeli military. They do that because they know that once they graduate from Unit 8200, a wealthy and lucrative career in Silicon Valley awaits them, or in one of the the burgeoning tech industry in Israel. Unit 8200, as I said, is really the centerpiece of the Israeli surveillance operation. Palestinians live their lives under constant Israeli bombardment, but also Israeli surveillance. And that is made possible by the tech that Unit 8200 develops. So people in Gaza, for example, walk around, but they are constantly monitored by facial recognition cameras, which track their every move. Often when they get to these checkpoints, the Israeli military guards at the border already know these people's names before they check their credentials, because they've got it up on the screen, because Unit 8200 has got all of this stuff on a database. They also check people's phones messages, they spy on their emails, look at their personal data, and this is all harvested and put into huge databases and used for compromise. So, for example, if a Palestinian is, secretly cheating on their partner, or is secretly gay, or needs a medical operation desperately, all of this sort of information can be used by the Israeli military to eke out, to extort certain either information or actions from these people, and eventually force ordinary Palestinians into becoming informants for them. In fact, one whistleblower from Unit 8200 said that he was secretly trained how to recognize all the different Arabic slang words for gay, so he could look out for them on calls. Now, Unit 8200, as I said, is extremely controversial. It's also developed so much of Israel's high-tech weapons industry, which Israel has been using for years now on Palestine. Let me tell you a little bit about projectlavender, which is an AI-generated kill list developed by Unit 8200 to get around the human bottlenecking targets that they used to have. What it does is it uses this ginormous amount of data they have on all Gazans and assigns every single Gazan, man, woman, and child, a score of between 0 and 100 based on how likely they think they are to be a Hamas member. And if your score reaches above a certain threshold, you are automatically put on the kill list and hit with AI weaponry such as drones. And that includes whether you're a child and sometimes even if you're a woman as well. If, for example, you live in the same building or the same apartment as a known Hamas official, that puts your score up. If you're in a WhatsApp group with somebody who they believe is a Hamas or PFLP member, that again puts your score up. So this is how the Israeli military managed to actually saturate Gaza with bombs, just constantly dropping things on anything that resembled a target back in 2023. Unit 8200 was also behind the infamous Lebanese pager attack, which happened exactly 1 year ago now. That pager attack was celebrated in Israel, but it was condemned all over the world, including by such, hardly like figures that are hardly like pro-Palestine, like, for example, the former CIA director Leonpanetta, who called it a major act of international terrorism. These are the sorts of highly controversial moves that Unit 8200 is behind. Its former staff were also behind the surveillance and hacking technology that we've seen all around the world, like the Pegasus app, which was used to spy on tens of thousands of politicians, foreign leaders like Emmanuel Macron, journalists, activists, anyone of public note. And Pegasus used this software to spy, as I said, on all sorts of people, but also sell it to repressive governments around the world. And the technology also had a backdoor in it, which allowed the Israeli military to look at all of this data that these repressive governments were amalgamating on all of these people. And of course, Pegasus was used by the Saudi monarchy when it was tracking Jamal Khashoggi, the Washington Post journalist. And they eventually cut him up into pieces with a bone saw in Turkey, didn't they? So ultimately, this is who Unit 8200 is. And that is why it is so inappropriate that these sorts of people who have been used, whose careers are dedicated to using tech to kill people or surveil people or hack into people's data, are now in charge of Silicon Valley companies, which we all trust implicitly with our most sensitive data, all of us, billions around the world all the time. And so we really have to be focusing on this and asking ourselves whether this is a personal security threat or a national security threat as well.
Well, it's a major threat because if you think about how addicted we all are to our cell phones, we sleep with our phones, we work from our phones, we talk from our phones, we communicate. It has become our lifeline. And when Netanyahu makes statements like, everybody who's holding a cell phone, you're holding a piece of Israel, that to me doesn't sound like a normal statement. It sounds like a direct threat that Israel is watching. And people need to know how serious this is. And all of this reporting, again, can be found on Mint Press News. Mint Press has exposed this network of Israeli Unit 8200 within the big tech sector in the United States. Now, the most recent news is that China and the US have come to a deal to keep TikTok alive in the United States. The deal will see the platform's US operations bought by an American consortium reported to be headed by tech giant Oracle. But we should be watching out for this. This is no TikTok ban. But what does that mean for the US and for the rest of us? Alan, you did an investigation looking into Oracle, which has extremely close links to both US and Israeli intelligence. And of course, we have to remember that TikTok is the #1 app for young people right now. So tell us more about this and what you found.
Yeah, well, a lot of people don't know anything about Oracle or about its founder and CEO, Larry Ellison. Oracle's the 4th biggest tech company in the world, but it doesn't really sell to consumers. It sells to businesses. It sells gigantic databases and other software to businesses. And they don't know about Larry Ellison, despite the fact he's the world's 2nd richest person. And his son is just about to buy CBS News as well. Ellison got his career started by working for the CIA. And in fact, Oracle is named after Project Oracle, which was a CIA project that Ellison worked on back in the 1970s. And for years, Oracle didn't have a single customer except the CIA until it started bidding on other contracts for the US military and other 3-letter agencies. So ultimately, Oracle and Ellison made their billions being the private face of the CIA. The CIA doesn't want to do things in-house anymore. It would much rather outsource these things to private companies who are not under the discretion of the Freedom of Information Act. And, journalists don't snoop into private companies' dealings as much as they would if it was the CIA. But Ellison is an extraordinarily powerful man within Silicon Valley, and he is also a pro-Israel zealot. In fact, I would say he's probably Israel's most powerful supporter in Washington, who is not actually a politician. Ellison is the IDF's largest donor. He in 2017 gave $16.6 million in one check alone to the Friends of the IDF, which, if people don't know, is a quote-unquote charity in the United States, which buys equipment and supplies for IDF soldiers. They hold these big galas in Hollywood and get people like Pharrell Williams and Gerard Butler to get on stage and say wonderful things about how, wonderful the IDF and Israel is. But Ellison, apart from making billions, his real passion in life is supporting Israel and the Israeli project. Here's a quote from one of these galas he was attending. He got up on stage and said this, quote, "In my mind, there is no greater honor than supporting the bravest people in the world. And I thank the Friends of the IDF for allowing us to celebrate and support these soldiers year after year. We should all do what we can to show these heroic soldiers that they are not alone." So that's really Ellison's mindset. He actually offered Benjamin Netanyahu a place on Oracle's board recently when it looked, just before the Gaza genocide, it looked like Netanyahu might be getting forced out in Israel. That salary was that position was replete with a salary of reportedly about $500,000. Ellison used to fly Netanyahu out to his private island so they could holiday together. The CEO of Oracle is also an Israeli. Her name is Fra Hughes. And when Oracle employees started protesting the company's very close relationship with Israel, she told them the whole purpose of Oracle from the start was to support Israel. This is a quote from Fra Hughes, the CEO of Oracle. "We are not flexible regarding our mission, and our commitment to Israel is second to none. Larry Ellison and I are publicly committed to Israel and devote personal time to the country. And that's the end of the quote. And she said, those who don't accept that should just leave and go somewhere else. So ultimately, Oracle is an organization that should be nowhere near owning or having any say within our means of communication or our media outlets. So, you know, we're seeing this company take over CBS. Looks like they're going to be taking over TikTok as well. That bodes very, very badly for freedom of speech online and also a diversity of opinion in US corporate media as well.
Well, that's quite the bromance you broke down between Larry Ellison and Bibi Netanyahu, but it really just goes to show just the way in which the Israeli intelligence tentacles are really taking over the US tech industry. And I know we have a lot of British viewers tuned in right now. So we have a special question for them, or not for them, but for you about the UK. For our British viewers, people should know about just how ingratiated this company is with the UK state, with the British state. This company, which you have outlined, Oracle, is basically a front group for US intelligence, has access to much of the UK's most sensitive information and data, including health and military records. And I think every British citizen should be raising hell about this. Talk to us more about this connection, Alan.
Oh yeah, I mean, Oracle now has access and is pretty much in charge of a wide swath of public and military data, including some of the most important personal data that we have in the United Kingdom. An example of this is, is in 2020, Oracle won a gigantic contract with the UK Ministry of Defence to provide it with cloud infrastructure, digital assistance, data visualization software, development tools, the whole shebang, really. The British military, at least the Ministry of Defence, basically runs on Oracle software now. And, you know, the army is not the only British institution that's entrusting its most important and critical data to this US-based firm. The Home Office, for example, the Office of National Statistics, and very importantly, the NHS, the National Health Service, also rely on Oracle databases to function. So, you know, what does that mean? That means that this Larry Ellison guy presumably has access to all of our medical records, and given his closeness with both the CIA and with the Israeli National Security State, that should really be raising enormous alarm bells. Even years before signing this Ministry of Defence agreement that I was talking about just earlier, Oracle and Larry Ellison had really been pushing themselves into the British establishment, employing all manner of really well-connected individuals at their foundation. I mean, just an example, Larry Ellison and the Oracle Foundation employed the father-in-law of Boris Johnson while Boris Johnson was Prime Minister. His name's Matthew Simons, and he reportedly earned around $600,000 a year for being the executive director of the Larry Ellison Foundation. Richard Meredith, again, the longtime director of the UK Foreign and Commonwealth Office, was also snapped up on a similar salary to become executive director. And suddenly when Oracle got all of these contracts, the Larry Ellison Foundation was closed down, which, does raise some questions about potential corruption issues there. Larry Ellison, of course, or at least his foundation, bankrolled the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change as well. So, Ellison likes to support former Conservative prime ministers, but also former Labour prime ministers as well. He's like an equal opportunity oligarch in that sense. But for sure, for the rest of us, this is a very worrying and very concerning development, because we really shouldn't want people with this much power and this much connections to have the sort of influence they do over the military, over the health service, and the Home Office as well. That spells disaster for democracy.
Absolutely. And if I was somebody who is in Britain, I would definitely be concerned with this information. And Alan, we really appreciate you joining us. I know you're in Singapore. It's like 4 a.m. and you just laid out all of these facts so eloquently. So thank you so much for being here. And as everybody has heard, This is the kind of coverage and investigations that we provide at Mint Press News. And right now we are actually in a place where we might have to shut down because one of our lines of funding has been cut. So we launched a fundraiser on Indiegogo, and we hope that you will join our campaign to support the incredible work that we provide at Mint Press News, as you just heard from the very mouth of one of our leading investigative journalists, senior staff writer, Alan MacLeod. All right, we are going to be going in next to take a phone call. So if you are joining us from the United States, you can call in at 1-844-944-3344. And if you're joining us from the UK, you can call in at 08081965522. And we also have a worldwide number, which is 0044-203-966-2625. And while we're waiting to get our phone calls in, I want to remind everybody that we do have a poll right now. It's a live poll active on Telegram, X, and on YouTube. And the question is the U.S. special relationship with Britain or Israel? So far, we have nearly 20,000 people who have voted. So please join that poll right now, and we'll be providing you with the poll answers towards the end of the show. So, all right, let's go into our lines right now. We have a caller from Ireland, Great Britain, and Palestine. It's a lot of places to be from. Terence, welcome.
Good evening, Mrs. Adley. It's nice to make your acquaintance. The question I want to ask you, how you see somebody of Palestinian heritage, differences between Ireland, the Irish Republic, where it supports Palestine wholeheartedly, the other parts of euphemistically called United Kingdom, like Wales, England, and Scotland. How you see the difference there? Is it resonating with you in America that the Irish streets ahead with their compassion, are streets ahead with what they've done, evicting the Israeli ambassador, yet there's still the big issue of war bonds? Where is that in America? Question I would like to ask you. And hats off to Karouche in Glasgow. As a Muslim man, it was heartfelt for you.
Thank you so much, Terence, for calling in. Of course, every single Palestinian knows that their Irish brethren, their brothers and sisters in Ireland, have stood with them strong, because we have a similar history of resisting colonialism and seeing this resistance take place now. I mean, one of our friends at Mint Press are the parliamentarians that recently rescinded from, or stepped down, from the Irish Parliament. They have stood with Palestine, defending Palestinians' right to exist and exposing not just what's happening now in Gaza, but have stood strong to defend Palestinians through our history of our land being ethnically cleansed and occupied by the state of Israel. And so we stand with the people of Ireland. We appreciate their support, and we will continue to stand together. Every single Irish person I have ever met has given me the biggest, most loving hug and have spoken so highly of their solidarity with Palestine. So we do appreciate that. All right, we are going to go in, and I, of course, would love to go into more details, but due to time, we are going to go into the comments from YouTube. I'm going to read these off to everybody. If you scan the QR code now and leave a comment on YouTube, as long as the comment is clean, we will be reading it out on air here on the show. So we have Ben Johnson, who says, Keir Starmer's first action as Prime Minister was to throw himself on his face and pledge eternal loyalty to Israel, but British nationalists claim Muslims control the country. How stupid is that? All right, we have Phil Dobson. His comment reads, special relationship. Mandelson's appointment as ambassador to the U.S. ended that. Okay. We have Chris Kennedy, which writes, which VPNs are owned by Unit 8200, i.e. Israel? Well, Chris, if you hop onto our website at Mint Press News and just do a quick search of Unit 8200 and VPNs, you will get a full list. And then we have Anji. This comment reads, this is going to happen across the West as Palantir has an NHS contract and they're working with police to pull over NHS records and our political affiliation, unions, TOG in the system. Absolutely. And you can read more on that on Mint Press News. And we have a lovely comment from Chloe Turnbro who says, Mnar, you are marvelous. Thank you. You are even more marvelous for joining us today. Thank you so much. All right, so looks like we are still waiting for Greg Stoker to join. We might be having some technical issues since he is joining us from the Samud Flotilla on the veteran boat. And these boats are sailing from Tunis to Gaza carrying humanitarian aid. However, they're using the Starlink for internet access. So he may be facing some technical issues. So in the meantime, we're going to be taking a caller from Joseph, who is from Liverpool. Go ahead, Joseph.
Hi, good evening. First of all, greetings to all listeners. And I have to say, you're doing a marvelous work taking over from George today. I just want to start quickly by touching up on what Alan said earlier on. Yes, Oracle is used deeply by Ministry of Department, and I'm talking to you as someone who was a serving member. Again, it was used by Home Office until maybe 3-4 years ago. They took over a new system called METIS, which I still believe is still being used in a way as surveillance. Now, to the main reason why I called, I get sick and tired with all this is going on. And my biggest problem has always been that any organization that calls itself united, a union, is a discriminatory organization. When there was a problem in Sudan, UNO sent troops on the ground. To date, UN sends troops to Cyprus to maintain order between the Turkish side and the Greek side. What has stopped UN from sending troops to Gaza to get these people fed? It's because they have tried before, and US said, we're not funding you anymore. Now, for anybody who knows so much about UNO, ask that person, why did Kofi Annan step down? Why was Kofi Annan overruled and the invasion of Iraq took place? These are things that the ordinary person is not aware of. And you have a lot of Americans jumping on the bandwagon based on misinformation. Again, the Arab League, there was a time I was really proud of the Arab League. I'm a Christian, but I was proud of the Arab League because they embodied what was proper looking after your neighbor. But at some point, they allow US, UK, France, and others to sow a seed of deceit among them. That's why you have Saudi Arabia sitting and watching Palestine being destroyed. That's why Qatar is watching as Palestine is being burnt and destroyed to rubble. Now, they should be asking themselves, what next when Palestine is gone? We already know Israel has attacked 7 countries in 2 years. Now, let's just say they take the whole of Palestine. That next approach will be going for Iran. Unfortunately, that wouldn't go well. Syria, half, almost gone, because they've got someone in place who is basically controlled by US. And for once, I saw that the Arab League had met to discuss the attack on Qatar. And how many days now? A week or so, still nothing has been done. The Arab League needs to wake up and know that this is not just an issue with Palestine. They've attacked Lebanon, Yemen. Actually, it's being bombarded by Saudi Arabia on behalf of Israel and US. It's not something that started recently. It's been going on some time. The Arab League really need to stand up and do what is necessary. But I am disappointed with United Nations. I am disappointed with FIFA. I'm disappointed with International Olympic Committee. I'm disappointed with UEFA. Because guess what? It took less than 3 days for all these organizations to put sanctions on Russia. And it's taking 2 years. And all that we hear from them that, Israel is still allowed to compete in every possible event. How two-faced is that? Do they have different measures that apply to certain people and then other people get immunity from certain things? Is that the example we're setting? Because if that's that's the message they're sending across, no wonder countries are waking up and drifting towards the likes of China, the likes of Russia, because Russia and China come into your country. They just want to do business. They don't care about your political situation unless you invite them to sort of offer you a protection. And this is why U.S. is losing. Now, this invasion and destruction of Palestine is continuing because Bibi has promised Trump a portion of the land, which is already named the Trump Heights. Now, let's just say Bibi says that I'm not giving that place to Trump again. The U.S. will go on full invasion on Israel. And it's going to be really nasty. Before I end, I just want to say this. For listeners and people who always misinterpret what is happening as a fight between Christians and Muslims or their Arab countries, please don't ever think so. If you have that idea or thought, it means you are easily to be deceived. First of all, Israel is not a country, it's not a Christian state. There are more Muslims in Israel than in Palestine. There are more synagogues in Palestine than even most part of Israel. Palestinians are Farsis. They are of Persian background. Yes, of course, Islam is spread there, but their main language is not even Arabic, it's Farsi.
You made a lot of really valid and important points. And of course, because of the Abraham Accords, the Arab League has turned into the puppet league for the United States and Israel. I mean, look, Israel just bombed Doha, Qatar during negotiation talks about the so-called hostages. And look at the reaction. Israel will reject all of these neighbors as allies and destroy those countries when they see fit. And of course, the project of Israel as a modern day colonial state is only serving the economic interests of the forever war machine. We are going to take one more phone call from Simon in Florida. Go ahead, Simon.
Greetings to you and to Mr. Galloway's worldwide audience. Well, today there's a lot of political intrigue in the United States. We're having congressional testimony not only from the Health and Human Services leader, Secretary Kennedy, but also the director of the FBI, Mr. Kash Patel, talking about investigations into recent assassination attempts on Trump, and also, of course, Charlie Kirk. But what has been little noticed, and what I believe one of your upcoming guests, Mr. Ritter, has been talking about in other forums, is the massive rewriting of control for the US State Department. Now, it turns out that that department hasn't had a separate funding authorization like the National Defense Authorization Act, which occurs annually since 2002. And the new head of the House of Representatives Foreign Affairs Committee is a gentleman who Mr. Ritter has often pointed out likes to wear his IDF uniform into the halls of Congress. He's a congressman by the name of Brian Mast from Florida, and he is pushing a extremely pro-Zionist agenda in, as he said today, reclaiming control of the US State Department. To that end, they had a bill, number 5300, that's forming part of this overall package, which up until this morning included a provision for the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, to be able to cancel American citizens' current issued passports, even if they were traveling overseas, for making anti-Israeli social media comments. That has been withdrawn, that particular section, at the last minute during this committee markup process, but they haven't actually published whether it's simply been deleted and everything's been renumbered, or if it's been replaced with something else. So all of this is being done somewhat in the shadows. Whilst we have, in theory, public transparency, there are a grand total of 170 people watching the proceedings on YouTube. Part of the steps that they're taking is the creation of an office known as the Bureau of Strategic Communications to replace the Office of Global Public Diplomacy. That new organization's stated purpose, in part, is to push back against the censorship activities of other governments. So obviously, I would have thought that would be of great concern to Mr. Keir Starmer, the current British Prime Minister for the next few months, who obviously has been engaging in a great deal of social media censorship and follow-up arrests, including many of your colleagues in the anti-Zionist movements. Maybe J.D. Vance will be overseeing that directly, the American vice president, so he can put a little bit more pressure on the British government to stop their censorship activities. But when thinking about how that ties in with the activities of Unit 8200, it should be recalled that those officers who leave the unit become reserve officers in the IDF. So they can be recalled and subject to orders at any point. It's not like they've served and completely disassociated from their former employers. And that becomes relevant as Prime Minister Netanyahu on Monday made this bold announcement that he wanted Israel to become autarkic, which means self-sufficient, which any US taxpayer will laugh heartily at. But he also suggested that Israel was going to have to be prepared to very much stand on its own in the near future. That caused the Israeli stock market to drop very sharply and got a lot of pushback from the left and the right side of the Israeli political spectrum that otherwise have been listening with glee to the recent descriptions of Minister Smotrich, the finance secretary of the Israeli government, who today was saying that he's in advanced discussions with the US government for the exact percentage split up of Gaza between America.
Simon, who's calling us from Florida. Please stay with us. We do have Scott Ritter coming on the show very soon, and we also were able to get a hold of somebody on the Samud Flotilla who will be joining us as well, since it looks like Greg Stoker is dealing with some technical issues. But we are heading in for a break. We'll see you in just a bit.
On the line is a legend. It's May in Oklahoma. On you go, May.
I know that when you started out in life, you probably were an outcast. And because of that, you love you love the outcast and you love the downtrodden. When I first started listening to you, you actually said you were embarrassed to have to ask for money. And I told you at that time that you didn't need to be, because you are worth your salt. Now you have MOATS TV, and I hope you have no shame asking for money to support, because I believe you're finally coming into your own and understanding how very, very important you are to many, many people all over the world, millions, I'm sure. And you also ask not only for their support, for their understanding, and you help motivate us to take action. I know you motivate me. And now you're being recognized all over the world. And I want you to remember, on those days when you just feel like you don't know how you can do it anymore, because we all feel that way, We see the pictures, we see the videos, we hear the news reports. You know, we Americans hear about shootings, and we all just despair sometimes. But I want you on those days to remember, number one, how far you've come from your beginnings. And number two, how far you brought other people along with you. Because you are bringing other people along with you. And you
that's the most important thing, May. I have to stop you. You're going to make me cry. But the most important thing is the people I'm bringing with me.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Welcome back, everyone. After this short break, we were able to get a hold of Greg Stoker, who may be joining us in a little bit. But for now, we have Fra Hughes, who is on the flotilla, and they are available to join us now to talk about breaking the siege on Gaza. Fra, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Fra, tell us how you and the group of flotillas have left the Tunisian port and are headed to Gaza. What has happened in the last 24 hours that allowed you to finally leave the ports of Tunis?
Well, we left Barcelona on the second night. There were some heavy storms that damaged some of the smaller ships, so we had to put in for repairs. Then there were some difficulties in customs and export papers in order to leave Tunisia. But I'm sure everyone's aware 2 of the boats were attacked in Tunisian waters. What happened was they attacked the family, which is the lead ship in the flotilla, and then they attacked the Alma. After that, we were given Tunisian security precautions with drone technology available by the military. We also had a marine escort all the way through Tunisian waters. So we're now off the coast of Sicily. The flotilla is gathering. We have the people from Italy, we have the people from Greek, the Greece boats all joining us. So it's a matter now of the flotilla kind of having a muster station, all the ships coming together, and then we set straight for Gaza. And everyone in the flotilla, we ask people to support us, but we want all eyes on Gaza. We're watching the continuing destruction, death, the decimation of the whole indigenous population. We're trying to create a maritime lifeline to Gaza. We know that the Israeli military have a closed military zone in front of us. We are an unarmed, non-violent humanitarian convoy working under international law through the 4th Geneva Convention. So we expect to be allowed free and safe passage to Gaza. Anyone who stops this convoy, this flotilla, and uses violence, it won't be the participants, it'll be the members of the racist idea.
Israel has targeted some of the flotillas while you guys were preparing to leave from the port of Tunis. How has that affected sailing?
The 2 boats that were there was an incendiary firebomb type device dropped from drones onto the decks of the boats. I assume they're trying to set them on fire to disable the boats. We also see it as a form of intimidation. We think that the IDF and the
I don't mean to interrupt you. Fra, we're having a very hard time making out what you're saying. Is it possible that you take off your headphones and speak directly to us through your phone?
Yes, how's that? Is that any better?
God damn it. All right, let me finish this.
It's a little bit better, but we're still having a hard time making out what you're saying. But go ahead, let's try it again.
Okay, I was just explaining that the problems that we had in Tunis were the attacks by the IDF with incendiary bombs dropped upon the upper decks of the ships in order to set them on fire and disable them. I assume that their plan might be to take out the bigger ships through either some form of violent attack upon the ship, some form of interception at a future point along our journey to Gaza. I mean, they have created a military zone. They appear to have set up live fire drills directly on course for the flotilla. So we'll have to wait to see what happens. We'll take whatever challenge we face, but we plan to go to Gaza. We want to tell the people in Gaza, we see you, we hear you, we are coming. The only thing that will stop us will be the same people that are murdering and slaughtering people in Gaza and their genocidal ethnic cleansing as we speak.
Well, Fra, I really want to have you on a little bit longer, but unfortunately we're having a very hard time hearing you. Your voice is very, very muffled, so the words are not making it through, and so we really, really apologize for this. So we are going to jump right into one of our callers. We have DJ Scorpion coming into us, calling us from Birmingham, and before we get that call in, I just want to let everyone know that we do have Greg Stoker ready, and he'll be joining us in a little bit, hopefully with a better line so that we can make out what he is saying. All right, DJ Scorpion, go ahead.
Good evening, Assalamu alaikum from Birmingham. This is Mnar Adley. Fantastic show you're doing in replacement of Brother George Galloway. We're just giving a quick announcement that the flotilla heading towards Gaza and Israel announced that will do anything to stop them. They've made 2 attacks. It's more than ever now that military intervention needed. And Pakistan, which is an organization run by Brother Usman Noor, going to be launching military intervention campaign, which has been highlighted over the last year or so on social media. We're going to be holding an event on Sunday, the 21st of September, 5:30 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. and working in relation with activist independent movement to host this event, which will be at Old Printworks, 498-506 Mosley Road, Salute, Birmingham, B12 9AH. Unfortunately, I know you can't get the graphics on the speakers on the night. Will be Usman Noor himself, Sheikh Asrar Rashid, McGuinness, Umar Hussain, Shazia Akhtar, Ibn Shad Kareem, Damon Minchella, and Morg Zani. Very, very important that people be able to attend this launch. And more than ever, we need a military intervention in Gaza, especially what happened last night and the last few days, the Gaza grand invasion and the bombings, the innocent lives that were lost last night, especially the images that are coming out of Gaza. More than ever now, the world needs to get behind. There needs to be a military intervention as soon as possible to end this live stream genocide that's happening in Gaza.
Thank you so much, DJ Scorpion, and wa alaikum assalam. Thank you so much for your comment. We are going to be going in to one more caller before we are joined by veteran turned anti-war activist Greg Stoker, who is live on the Samud Veteran Flotilla. We have the Big Amish calling us from Washington, D.C.
Good evening, Mnar. I would like you to give us an insight into how the Palestinians' freedom of expression is handled by Israelis for Palestinians in Palestine. And then I would like you to comment on how the social media, especially TikTok now being sold, and if influenced by Israeli, do you think that would be used to surveil and then target individuals expressing such freedoms?
Thank you so much, Big Amish. Just to answer your question, I was actually in Palestine visiting family for the first time since I was a teenager, just 2 years ago. And it was nearly impossible to get anyone that I had met with to talk or post things online about what was happening in Palestine with the occupation. Israel has a chokehold on the information and what can be posted online. Facebook has a history, of course, with working with the State of Israel through its so-called free speech court, where they purged hundreds of thousands of Palestinian posts online that showcased Israel's brutality, occupation, and ethnic cleansing. And so Palestinians have a chokehold on them for speaking up against the occupation, especially those who live in Jerusalem, in Al-Quds, who are governed by the Israeli government. After Israel launched its genocide in Gaza, Israel sent out a mass text message to all Palestinians telling them that if they show any sort of solidarity or even message their family members, that they will be arrested. And this means that Israel was monitoring all of their communications in Palestine. And we actually know many people back home who were arrested, and even Palestinian Israeli citizens who have the Israeli citizenship who were arrested for saying anything positive to humanize the Palestinians living under the current genocide in Gaza, facing the bombs and facing famine. So Palestinians are not even able to send messages to each other to talk about the Gaza genocide. And that's what has been taking place now for the last 2 years. There was a little bit more flexibility before that, but now, since Israel is, of course, losing on the international front and is trying to control what is being said about the genocide, they are threatening arrests, and they're doing it. They're cracking down on the Palestinian people. And so that's what we have seen. We are done taking phone calls. We really appreciate your question and your comment from the Big Amish from Washington, D.C. We are now joined by Greg Stoker. He is a veteran who served a couple rounds in Afghanistan, and he has he's transformed himself into an anti-war activist. He's also a journalist with Mint Press News. He's one of our staffers, and he joins us now from the Samud Flotilla. He is leading the veteran boat, which is there to break the siege on Gaza. Greg, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I think we solved the audio issues on the flotilla, but I'm on a completely dark deck, and all I've got for a light source is this. So sorry about the video quality.
That's okay, Greg. As long as we can hear you, we want to hear what you have to say. You run a live stream at Mint Press News and on the Outcast podcast that you also run on your own, and you provide incredible analysis on the military and on Israel. And so I think a lot of people are curious to know what happened in the days ahead of leaving the Tunisian docks when Israeli drones literally targeted the Samud flotillas.
Yeah, okay, so I know, first of all, I can't say as like a journalist that we have connected anything to the Israeli government. First of all, they were just DJI drones. This is something you can purchase at any sort of drone retailer. The explosive itself that was dropped on the Alma the second night was basically just a smoke grenade, an M14 class smoke grenade, which, due to the historic conflicts in the region, is impossible to track its supply lines. It was put inside a bag or next to a plastic bag of accelerant like gasoline. And basically what happened is what we think, or what my analysis would be, was that a drone flew over the ship, dropped a servo arm, released the package that had a pull trigger on it, and that ignited the bag of accelerant, and it landed on the deck. The smoke grenade didn't cook off because it didn't have a heat threshold, and the contraption was not properly manufactured, and then the firefighting response, which was really fast on the crew's behalf, was able to put it out quickly. So I think going forward, we can see other methods of sabotage, but not using Israeli equipment. This is all stuff you could get in the region. In the city of Tunis itself, there's nothing that really ties it to it, but it could have been a third-party actor with Zionist sympathies. But as you can see, it was really sloppily done. The contraption itself really didn't go off. And what it did allow us to do was revamp our security and drone reporting parameters. So it actually helped the flotilla. So we're heading along now. We're just south of the coast of Sicily, about to link up with the Italian flotilla and try to head to Gaza altogether. However, there's some pretty strong gale force winds coming in tomorrow, so we're going to have to make some weather decisions. I would like to remind everybody that this is going to be a multi-week process. We are under sail. We didn't use any commercial ships or any fishing vessels because they require different licenses, which are really open to sabotage and bureaucratic warfare. So we're all on like private sailing vessels that we cobbled together through a grassroots funding campaign. So we're going there a little slowly. Everybody wishes we could go faster. We wish we could go faster because, as we know right now, as of a few hours ago, we've learned that the Israeli military, during their assault on Gaza, has shut down all internet, and the only people that can now transmit are people with eSIMs, and it's almost impossible, and it takes a long time to upload videos. So this is very intentional as they, set the stage for the final solution in Gaza, that they're shutting off the internet. So what they're doing right now at this moment, at time of recording, happens in darkness.
Absolutely, and we commend you and all of the participants in the Samud flotilla for their absolute bravery in trying to break this siege for Gaza. Gaza is facing a catastrophic level 5 for famine. The children there, the women, the fathers, those that are left in Gaza are starving. There's no food left in Gaza, no clean water. And the participants in the flotilla are standing up to an out-of-control apartheid state engaging in this ethnic cleansing campaign. What do you expect Israel to do as you approach the coast of Gaza? Because, one flotilla going in, maybe not that big of a deal. 2 flotillas going, maybe not that big of a deal. But now you guys are a group of about 40 or more flotillas heading to Gaza. How will Israel react to that? What do you think will happen?
Yeah, well, the standing number here is anywhere between 40 and 50 ships right now, just because operational parameters, because a lot of these are private vessels. A lot of these were donated at the last minute. Not all of them are going to make it. There's going to be mechanical failures. Some ships are going to fall out en route. But still, a historic and unprecedented amount of ships are going to enter international waters off the coast of the Gaza Strip in order to try and establish a humanitarian corridor into the Gaza Strip and to people facing existential annihilation. So the Israeli Navy is pretty small. It's only got about 60 ships, 45 patrol boats, couple missile cruisers, 7 to 8 cruisers, and 5 submarines. Do they have the capacity to intercept all ships? Well, I guess we're going to find out. I suspect they do. And so, we get a lot of hate about, isn't this performative activism? Aren't you just going to get intercepted anyways? But I would push back to say, why would you frame it that way? What we're doing is actually literally protected under international law and international maritime law, which the U.S. Navy, by the way, is supposed to uphold. It just chooses not to when it comes to Israel. But, if they block it, it would be a violation of international law. Of course, that no longer means anything after 2 years of unmitigated genocide. But, we are going to still stand and try to deliver aid. We are waging an existential information war for the survival of the people in Gaza. And, a lot of things have happened recently. Their entire propaganda apparatus is on the back foot, and there's a lot of things going on with that. But the UN yesterday just declared that a genocide was finally happening in Gaza. They're still reeling from that. And if you look at their engagement with the flotilla itself, their Hasbar is not really engaging with us yet. We're a problem that they don't really want to deal with because, again, it's unprecedented. They've never done it before. And it's not a good look. It's not really legally defensible. So what they're hoping to do is hope it collapses before we even get there. But we've already passed the stages of bureaucratic warfare where they tried to pressure ships captains and the ports and local governments to pull ships insurance, pull flags so we can't sail in international waters, shut down the harbors. That didn't work. So now I think we're looking towards intense psychological operations once we get closer. The same things that they do to journalists in Gaza, like calling their cell phones, threatening, doxing. I've suggested that everybody in the flotilla gets an internet scrubbing device, because if they don't do it, like Israeli military doesn't do it, well, a lot of the Hezbollah will try to dox activists, journalists, MPs on the flotilla, and all the way up to Ben Gvir threatening us with long-term prison sentences and terror dungeons. But is it politically viable? Well, I guess we'll find out. But anyways, we're going to keep sailing, and the rogue genocidal apartheid state's going to do what it's going to do, and the world will be our judge. You know, I think a lot of people, especially in the U.S. empire, which is where this begins and ends, are really sick of it. You know, currently, right now, as we speak, there are 250 U.S. state representatives at the state level in Israel for the 50 states, one Israel conference. So a lot of people have been asking, how do you want to support the flotilla? Well, we don't need money anymore, but if you live in the United States, please, there's 5 representatives from each state currently in Israel going through a paid propaganda trip that's meant to enforce and lobby for anti-BDS legislation on the state level. So if you really want to support this flotilla, you can do parallel actions with us back home and let your state representatives know what you think about that.
Absolutely, and that's what democracy looks like, right? Speaking of democracy, Greg, you are an American, you are a former soldier at that, and now anti-war activist. How is the United States dealing with a boat of veterans heading to Gaza?
Well, actually, Lloyd Doggett, my state representative, my congressional representative out of Texas, made a statement that I should be allowed to pass. Beyond that, we haven't really heard anything. Again, like veterans and activist spaces, especially that challenge the government, are not. We're kind of a nuisance. First of all, the support our troops thing, they don't really care about vets or anything like that. They're just a propaganda piece for when they need military recruitment. But we're not really sure. So what we expect going forward is like not the government to address us directly, but they have a lot of paid actors, especially on X and other social media, that will do like investigations into our personal lives and try to discredit us with stolen valor accusations. But everybody, all the veterans on board this boat have been vetted. There is no stolen valor accusations. Everybody has been investigated, and we're good to go. So I think they'll probably just try to ignore us as best we can. Of course, no U.S. citizen from any of the flotillas that has been arrested by the Israeli military, or kidnapped rather, on the high seas and put into immigration detention has ever had any support from the U.S. consulate in Israel. And of course, you know, our representative there is Mike Huckabee, the notorious Christian evangelical Zionist. So he's not going to do anything for us, but our position in terms of messaging inside this flotilla is to show to Americans that, you know, our greatest ally is, you know, of course, imprisoning veterans, but also to explain to people, like, we know firsthand that whatever violence and repression we conduct overseas is always used back on our own people. You know, the same mechanisms of spyware and surveillance tech that enforces occupation and apartheid in Palestine is at a militarized local police department near you. So if you accept the premise that fascism is on the rise in America and needs to be challenged, well, we believe personally that the front line of that is actually Palestine, because it is the linchpin of all our colonial and imperial violence that we are still enacting in 2025. And that redounds back to every aspect of American life.
Absolutely. You make a very good point. And that was pretty much the premise of my monologue and some of the things that Alan provided on Israel's surveillance tech. Can you tell us a little bit more about your background, Greg, and why you chose to join the flotilla?
Yeah, I'm a former U.S. Army Ranger, which is a special operations unit within the U.S. Army. I did 4 combat deployments to Afghanistan, dabbled a little bit in human intelligence collection. And, you know, over the years, after not just being disillusioned by Obama's drone strike campaign and special operations assault tempo, just formal education about, you know, what was imperialism and colonialism. And then all a senseless war that I didn't understand all started to make sense. So I'm here because, you know, I stand in opposition to a self-destructive system of violence that not only destroys countries and people and lives in the global south, but our own, all in service to a 0.1% ruling elite that dominates our politics and, presents us with the veneer of democracy when it doesn't really exist. So I also refuse to live in a world where we can, just sit at brunch where an entire people are annihilated. Because at the end of the day, even if you don't really have a lot of empathy, you have to understand and realize that this is what the ruling class has decided is normal, to delete an entire population for a real estate development deal and ideology. And whatever they're willing to do to Palestinians, they're willing to do to you too. Hey, Blackstone, the same companies and corporations that are bidding for development contracts in Gaza right now are the same ones that bought up all the single-family homes during COVID. And that's why you can't pay rent, and that's why you never buy a house, and that's why you will keep working until you die. So it's all connected, and I'm using my position here on the flotilla to try to spread that message.
And that is absolutely commendable, Greg. We appreciate this beautiful transformation that you have had in calling out the U.S. empire. I'm curious to know, based on what you're saying, looking at the aftermath of Charlie Kirk's assassination, what do you see happening in the United States with all of these new attempts for legislation to crack down on dissent?
So, of course, we can make the observation that I wrote that martyrs are used kind of by these messianic movements to sanctify violence, right? The canonization and the sanctification of Charlie Kirk as this saint who believed in free speech and dialogue with political opponents is meant to mobilize a movement against any sort of left-wing or progressive movement because they killed him. So the assassination of Charlie Kirk is actually really concerning to me because it raises the threat assessment for the flotilla in a very real way, because the Trump administration is now framing any action that it doesn't like, and it doesn't like this action, as left-wing. This entire flotilla action is a left-wing endeavor. That's what people say about it. So will they give more cover for Israel to act with impunity? We've seen what the Trump administration and the U.S. Navy has been doing off the coast of Venezuela, killing a boat full of 11 people with a drone strike, and then recently another boat in violation of international law, extrajudicial killings. Everything that's happening right now is making the world, from a global security position, a whole heck of a lot less safe. And the assassination of Charlie Kirk is just going to be used to fuel fire for more impunity, more extrajudicial policing and executions. And that's what we have to look forward to. But I know the night's dark, but there is a lot less cohesion and unity on the right than a lot of the propagandists would like you to suspect. Candace Owens recently came out yesterday with one of her biggest live streams about how this wasn't a left-right issue. This was a ruling class versus working class issue. So, there is a lot of transformation happening within the American political landscape. Left-wing factions, liberal factions, right-wing factions are kind of dissolving and changing and coming together in a way that we can't really anticipate. So yes, about 7 days after the assassination of Charlie Kirk, temperatures are still really high, but the Civil War ain't happening yet because there isn't even that kind of unity among right-wing circles, even though they are in shock by what happened. But in the immediate term, that does make the flotilla a lot less safe, this demonization of left-wing political actions, because, I don't know, what are they going to do? Say that we're Hamas and then authorize naval strikes on us? So we're just going to take it day by day and try to preempt Israeli military action and U.S. impunity by calling it out and making it politically non-viable. We are, of course, a humanitarian flotilla, and we have a strict practice of non-violence, attempting to establish a humanitarian corridor into Gaza. And that's all we can really say and all we can really do.
And I was just about to say the same thing. This is a humanitarian corridor. There are no weapons aboard these ships. And Greg, we just have 2 minutes left. Can you tell us what you plan on doing when and if you arrive in Gaza?
So a lot of these ships, again, are small. They have a minimal amount of aid. What we want to, I mean, there are larger command ships that have a considerable amount of diesel aid, a lot of water. I'm on a 14-foot boat. Our job is to just be there, stand in solidarity, deliver what aid we have, and then sail to another port, establish a precedent of this actually working, and continue to send flotillas and small streams of aid in and out. And then once this movement gains viability, people see that it's possible, then we'll start seeing a higher volume of commercial traffic or independent traffic to try and attempt to deliver aid into Gaza. Israel can't really tolerate that, so we are definitely going to come to a place or an impasse in international waters about this, but that is the intention. It's not to save the people. We don't have the cargo capacity to do it, but what we can do and what we want to do is set the precedent to show other people that it can be done, so more and more and more people mobilize to do the same thing.
Absolutely. And Greg, we commend you for all of your efforts in trying to help the people of Gaza. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
All right, everyone. Thank you for sticking through up until this point and for your patience. We are going to be headed to a break, but stay tuned because Scott Ritter is up next.
What a great show this is! I listened to it, I thought, wow, what a great show. I've called into your show today, George, because I'm a great caller. Probably the greatest caller you've ever had. I really am. The only way your show could be better is if it had more of me, Donald J. Trump, in it. You keep talking about me, George. You do. I've heard it, I have. So many of the American people, the best people, listen to your show. And I've heard them crying about me. I have, and I listen and I go, ooh, America, don't cry. Don't cry. You need to be careful what you say about me, George. You don't want me to put a tariff on your show like I did with China. And then you'll come running for my help, just like little Zelensky. I know you will. I know these things. Make the mother of all talk shows great again. That's why we're here. That's what we're gonna do, George. We're gonna boost your ratings. Donald is gonna boost them bigly. I'm giving your show the Trump bump. You're welcome, George. Thank me. And remember, nobody talks like me. Nobody calls like me. And absolutely nobody ends a phone call like me. I'm hanging up now. Not because I finished, but because I won.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Welcome back, everyone. Before we get into conversation with Scott Ritter, we are going to be taking one more live phone call from Richard, who is in Paris. Welcome, Richard.
Thank you very much for the welcome. I'm very pleased to be able to speak to you. I haven't seen you before, but thank you for standing in for George and his beautiful wife. And I have something to say about Oracle.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so it's not really a query, it's a dilemma. As a Unix system administrator working freelance, I've been installing Oracle on Unix systems. And for our listeners, you should know that almost 80% of all European banks, and I've worked for ING, I've worked for Societe Generale, I've worked for Barclays, I've worked for 5 or 6 other banks, and almost all of them, 80% of them use Oracle. And I was very, very surprised to hear from your article that this is basically in the hands of the Israelis, and that puts me in a moral dilemma, which I want to put forward. Mm-hmm. My job as a Unix system administrator is very, very similar to Edward Snowden. And for our listeners, you have to understand that people who understand Unix have a unique capacity having what we call the root password in order to be able to install and to make sure that the infrastructure for these Oracle databases, it is me that would install the terabyte of data needed. It would be me that would install the capacity to use the computer, the CPU, and access to memory. And that puts me in a dilemma. Because what can we do as citizens, even though I have this technocratical background and I can put these things in place, but that puts me in a real moral dilemma, not unlike Edward Snowden, who was doing a very similar job, except in a more secret environment. And so thank you for opening my eyes about the issues of Oracle. But now I tread very much wary of how do I progress in my career as a Unix system administrator.
Richard, I can hear it in your voice that you're dealing with an internal dilemma and struggle in understanding what to do. And I really appreciate you calling in. And honestly, to answer that, I don't think I can really technically give you the answer to that question. Because if you think about it, we are living in a system where Israel's intelligence apparatus, through its tentacles, are so far and wide that it's putting us all in this moral dilemma of what are we supposed to do. I mean, me as an American, I'm an American citizen. My tax money is going to the state of Israel. But you are working within a company that is actively using Oracle. And I don't know if I can answer that question for you on what you can do, but I would possibly look at alternatives. I mean, that's really just one step closer to liberating yourself from that moral dilemma. It is really unfortunate. And that's why our reporting at MIT Press News is so important, because most people don't know. They don't know. And this is why it is so important to support independent watchdog journalism outlets like MIT Press News. I mean, we are standing up against a massive Goliath of corporate news organizations. And just take the BBC. They have Unit 8200 veterans working there, like Rafi Berg at the BBC. He's an editor, and they're controlling what people know about Gaza and other world issues to support and promote endless wars, not just the war in Gaza, but endless wars. And so the effects of this issue is far-reaching, and all we can do is move into independent platforms and sources, even within the tech industry. So we commend you for your honesty and for your bravery and for speaking up. Thank you. So the wait is over. We have Scott Ritter on the line here with us. Scott Ritter doesn't need much of an introduction, but he's a friend of MIT Press, and he's a friend of the show here at the mother of all talk shows. Most of you probably already know him. Scott is a former U.S. Marine Corps intelligence officer and United Nations weapons inspector charged with observing Iraqi WMDs. Welcome to the show, Scott.
Thanks for having me.
Well, it's so good to have you here, Scott. Now, we're going to be moving on to the subject of things that are happening in West Asia. Since the overthrow of Bashar al-Assad in December, we have seen Israel extend its influence over Syria. Now, a US-backed security agreement is on the table, which would see a demilitarized zone and a no-fly zone extending from the Israeli border all the way to Damascus. What have you made of this deal? And just before you answer that, we got to consider that Israel just bombed Damascus a couple of days ago.
Israel's bombed more than just Damascus. Israel continues to strike wherever it wants to in Syria. The notion that Syria is a sovereign state is ridiculous at this juncture. And the other, I think, vote that needs to be considered is, what does Turkey think of this? Turkey has a vested interest in the future of Syria, and the Israelis are obviously concerned about this. This is why I think we're looking at a demilitarized zone to create a gap between the Israeli occupied spaces of southern Syria and the limits of Turkey's military progress into Syria. The Israelis fear having Turkey directly on their border because that creates an opportunity for force-on-force confrontation that could lead to direct war between Israel and Turkey, which is something Israel doesn't want. Recently you had senior Israelis say that the number one threat to Israel isn't Iran, it's Turkey. And so I think that's why the United States is pushing so hard to get this demilitarized space.
Well, it's really interesting to see what has developed inside of Syria. We have a former ISIS commander, Ahmed al-Shara', or formerly known as Abu Muhammad al-Julani, have his image and his reputation and his history as an ISIS commander completely whitewashed, and now being welcomed with open arms by the West. Where do you think Syria is going with this new leadership?
Like you, I'm somewhat perplexed as to what exactly is going on here. Either the United States and other nations have basically erased their collective memories about what ISIS was, what ISIS is, or Jolani was in the game the entire time. And there, of course, is some hints with U.S. intelligence about, giving ISIS space in order to destabilize the Assad regime, that basically the United States sought to use the forces of Islamic extremism inside Syria to weaken Bashar al-Assad. And now, Assad has fallen and they have to live with the consequences. But I don't know where this is going, because Jolani is inherently incompatible with any vision the United States has of normalized society. This is a man where you can put a suit on this guy, you can put a tie on this guy, but he still commands people who are committing horrific atrocities against Shia, against Alawites, against Christians, and against any Sunni who doesn't agree with their limited vision of Islam. I can't see this relationship lasting. I think what we're seeing is evidence that Jolani's victory took everybody by surprise, and people are still trying to come to grips with how they're ultimately going to to react to this.
Absolutely. And I think, for those who have watched, al-Julani take over this leadership position inside of Syria, we watched him close up all of the resistance camps inside of Syria, saying that, we can't get involved with the resistance against Israel. There have been a lot of rumors about normalization with the state of Israel. And of course, as Israel bombs Syria and takes some of its land, and destroys the equipment of the Syrian military, al-Julani doesn't seem to have any big responses. What do you say about that?
Again, I think this is proof positive that Jolani's victory even took Jolani by surprise. There doesn't seem to have been any long-term planning, any contingencies in place. We're seeing a man seeking to consolidate his hold on Damascus and in his hold on the Syrian countryside, all the while Turkey is seeking to figure out what to do with this Jolani victory. I mean, everybody needs to remember that Jolani wasn't Turkey's go-to man in Damascus. Turkey actually had a Syrian government in exile that it was looking to install, and Jolani got in ahead of that game. Nobody expected this outcome, and as a result, you're seeing just people making things up as they go along, no plan whatsoever on how to proceed. And even the United States, I mean, the imagery of the American admiral who commands Central Command, whose forces today are in Syria and Iraq, allegedly hunting down ISIS, standing side by side with Jolani, shaking his hand, just is mind-boggling to me.
Absolutely. And I want to turn to Iran here. Steve Bannon recently said his impeccable sources confirmed that the U.S. and Israel are still pushing for regime change in Iran, while the Gray Zone's Max Blumenthal has claimed that billionaire Bill Ackman was pressuring Charlie Kirk to back such a project, reportedly offering him $150 million. None of this is in the mainstream, but it echoes the writing on the wall that we've seen before over regime change operations. Given your experience exposing false WMD claims in Iraq and warning about how propaganda and financial pressure are used to manufacture consent for war, do you see credible signs that Washington and Tel Aviv, again, are laying the groundwork for regime change in Iran now under the Trump administration?
Well, I think we need to understand that the United States and Israel have had for some time now policies of regime change. Even when the Obama administration was negotiating the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, the Iran nuclear deal, their CIA was creating an Iran mission center whose job was to find the mechanisms necessary to remove the Iranian regime from power. It's been the goal and objective of every American presidency since the Reagan administration. No American president ever has thought, "Oh, I can live in peace and harmony with the theocracy in Tehran." And I think the Iranians are fully aware of this. I mean, they make tactical decisions about the necessity to negotiate here, negotiate there, because they're fending off a variety of threats, sanctions, economic threats, covert threats, etc. And yes, I think Israel and the United States are looking to create a WMD type excuse for regime change in the form of a nuclear weapons program. This is where I think the wisdom of the Iranians comes into play. There's many people out there saying that the 12-day war, Israel's surprise attack against Iran, is proof positive that Iran must seek a nuclear weapon. I've said from day one that if Iran does seek a nuclear weapon, that will be the end of the Iranian regime, because all gloves will come off. And I think the Iranian government understands this, because we're seeing them enter a new relationship with the International Atomic Energy Agency, even as everybody acknowledges the IAEA played a role in facilitating the Israeli attack. But the Iranians understand that in order to keep Russia and China on their side, they must stay in the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. And to stay in the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, they must have a relationship with the IAEA. And so long as Iran takes this tack, it's going to be very difficult for Israel and the United States to manufacture an excuse for a regime change operation, especially with Iran in possession of missiles that can inflict extraordinarily harm on Israel in any future endeavor of that nature.
And we saw when when Tel Aviv was enduring the attacks by Iran, they did a lot of damage inside of Tel Aviv. But unfortunately, because of the Israeli censor, we don't really know for sure how much that damage was, but we do know it was quite bad and cost them millions, if not billions of dollars. We have seen reports of Israeli agents being accused of planting surveillance devices on U.S. emergency vehicles. We have a theme for today's show, which has been Israeli surveillance tech. Before that, the Trump administration concluded that Israel planted cell phone surveillance devices all around the White House. What do you make of the Israeli operation to surveil and spy on the U.S., and how extensive is it?
Well, the United States has been a top Israeli espionage target from the very beginning. We only need to bring up the name of Jonathan Pollard to understand that Israel has been spying on the United States since the 1980s, and I would say even prior to that. Israel is very concerned about the United States, and especially about American leadership. They need to understand what is being said behind closed doors. They need to ensure that America continues to support Israel without any hesitation. So what they're looking for, by monitoring the communications of the president and his inner circle, is an indication of a weakening of resolve. And then Israel will turn on its influence system here in the United States to firm up that resolve, using whatever tactics and techniques the Israelis use, money, blackmail, you name it. This is what they do. I'll just say this up front. Israel is not a friend of the United States. I wish people would understand this wholeheartedly. They're not our friends. They're not our allies. They use us for their survival. The Zionist entity in Israel cannot survive without the full support of the United States. And so it's the top national security priority of Israel to ensure that America continues to support Israel. And this is why you see them spying on our president. I'll say that one more time for the American audience. Spying on our president, your president. And that simply can't be allowed. Israel is a hostile entity to the United States, and we need to recognize that. We also need to recognize that whatever we're doing with Israel, the crimes that Israel are committing because of us, it impacts our reputation as well. The world is recognizing Israel as a genocidal entity, and the United States is being hit with that label too, because without us, there would be no Israeli genocide in Gaza today.
That's right. And we appreciate you, Scott, for being here with us today, for helping us end this amazing show. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we are going to be turning next to our final comments on YouTube as we wrap up this show. But before we do that, I just want to thank everybody who has tuned in with us this far. We appreciate you being here. And if you enjoyed the conversations, the investigative reporting that we did share here today on the massive Israeli spying and surveillance state, please support Mint Press News on Indiegogo to support our journalism. We have launched a fundraiser to keep our investigative journalism alive. All right, so we have on YouTube, you can scan the QR code now and leave a comment. Of course, we're only going to be reading the comments that are clean. Our first comment is coming at us from Michael Barlett. He says, the Zionists are causing a huge wave of anti-Semitism around the world, especially for those who don't understand the difference between Zionism and Judaism, and I fear it is going to be very bad. Thank you, Michael. Then we have a comment from James Jams, who is sending lots of love to the flotilla. We have Ben Johnson, who says, isn't it interesting how when the West wants to bring freedom to Iran, they mean the most repressive tyranny in history, the Shah. I mean, that's typically how regime change works, according to the US empire. Thank you so much, Ben Johnson. We have a comment from Neurodiverse Seeks Like-Minded. His comment reads, this is seriously good information. I need to start watching Mint Press News. I love George's passion, but this is great stuff. Hey, we really appreciate it. We hope to see you on our channel at Mint Press News, on our website, mintpressnews.com. We are closing also in on the poll here. The question was, is the US's relationship with fill in the blank, Britain or Israel? We had 21,225 people vote, and the answers are in. It is Israel. Wasn't much of a surprise there. So we really appreciate everybody who has joined in today. This is Mnar Adley. I'm the founder and director of Mint Press News, filling in for George Galloway on the mother of all talk shows. We appreciate you being here today.